Hey everybody, welcome to the 2018 update for the Andrew Deitch podcast. How's it going, everyone? It is currently 11:59 on December 31st, 2017. No lie, it's really 11:59. I can hear some fireworks in the background. It's about to turn midnight. I was going to record this episode a little bit later, but I thought it would be kind of fun to record this right now at midnight, and I'll ring in the new year with you guys. But I just wanted to make a short little episode here, mainly just because I haven't really been able to put out any update episodes recently. I've just been working super hard on putting full-length episodes out there, and I kind of just dropped the ball in these update episodes. But I was going to write out a whole script for this and make it super, focused, but I kind of just wanted to have a little rant, not super rambly. Oh, looky there. Just changed to midnight. It is now officially 2018. Welcome to the future, everyone. People listening to this in the future. Just letting you know, 2018, it's a big deal. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to touch on something that's kind of on my brain, because obviously I'm not out partying or something right now. I decided that I was just going to stay in tonight and work on some stuff, and for whatever reason that gives me a lot of joy in the fact that I know that other people are partying and stuff, but I'm working on my business, I'm working on my stuff, putting out content, creating content, working on my website, working on my promo materials, honing my craft. It's kind of like the whole thing, I'm going to wake up early before my competition. You know what I mean? I don't know. That kind of stuff just always kind of gets me fired up. But I've done a lot of partying in the past year, so I think I could stay in for one night. But I wanted to go over a couple things. Number one, the podcast has been a little bit low on listeners recently. I always want to be completely transparent with you guys. I think it's mainly because of the holiday season. I think that everyone getting caught up in the hustle and bustle of all of the shopping and Christmas and all that kind of stuff, people aren't listening to podcasts as much. And it's kind of funny because, I found myself not consuming as much podcasts, and I tend to listen to a lot of them. So it makes sense that my numbers are down, because it's easy to get discouraged about that kind of stuff, it's something that I don't really want to always admit. I don't want to come on here and say, the numbers are down, the numbers are low, but they are, but it's not like they're crazy low. I mean, I can pull them up right now. It doesn't really matter anyways what they are. But yeah, the analytics, before we were averaging 1,000 people a day, and the past month we've been averaging 700, 800, 600. It's never dipped below 600, but still seems it would just keep going up and up and up. But such is life. That's just how things go. It's cyclical. Nothing is permanent. So that just means I gotta dig deeper and go harder for 2018. But wanted to share some statistics with you guys. Number one, I've been able to release 66 full feature-length podcasts in just around 7 months. And so that's an average of about one podcast every 3 days, which is pretty crazy. And that's also including the 7 update podcasts that I did, plus the 1 intro podcast that I called Episode 0, and the bonus episode that I did with Ashlyn Showalter, for a total of 75 uploads this year. So that means I uploaded, like I said, an average of almost one every 3 days, which is pretty crazy for a podcast. A lot of podcasts I listen to are like once a week. But my favorite podcasts, for example, like the Joe Rogan podcast, he uploads multiple times a week. And I think that if I want to get on a level like that, I just need to keep putting out lots of content like him. Also, another kind of interesting statistic is I've had 18 women on the podcast as a guest, and I've had 42 men for a total of 60 guests. And you're thinking, okay, but you've had 66 episodes. That is because Trey Reed, Connor Peterson, Owen Lutz, Heidi Uzelak, and Adam Kashoro have all been on the podcast twice. So with that being said, I've had 60 total guests. But yeah, I mean, my ratio is like 18 to 42 women to men. I think I need to have some more women on the podcast. Need some more girls on the podcast this year. I was supposed to have two women on my podcast this past week, but due to some rescheduling that occurred, we decided to change it up. So we're gonna record at a later date, and of course the holidays have kind of thrown a wrench in everything. I wanted to have 70 episodes. It sounded like a really cool round number to have uploaded by December 31st, but it didn't happen. But you know what? That's just kind of how things go. But I don't want to make this episode like seem depressing or anything, like, oh, the numbers are down, didn't make my goals. There's a lot of amazing stuff that's happened this year simply because I made the decision to do a podcast. And I wanted to kind of like touch on a few things and reasons why I think podcasts are exploding. I wrote an article earlier. It's going to be featured on Voyage ATL. And I kind of talked about why audio is exploding. And here, I'm going to pull that up real fast. Can you guys hear the fireworks in the background? It's kind of crazy out there. My neighbors are setting off some fireworks. I can see them through my window right now. But yeah, so I've never really told this part of my story, and I just wanted to go over it quickly. This was an article that I wrote for Voyage ATL. So I'm going to skip over a little bit, but basically I said that during my solo travels, when I was living in Italy and Spain, I became an avid podcast consumer. Podcasts became a way of life for me. They still are, but I had my headphones in all the time. If you know me, I always have my Bluetooth headphones in. They're always hanging around my neck, and that's because I'm always ready to pick up where I left off on my last podcast. The next quiet moment I get, I'll plug them in, start listening to my podcast. And not my podcast, whatever podcast I'm listening to. Sometimes I'm listening to my podcast. Sometimes it's good to listen to my own podcast so I can see how I can improve and what I like about them, what I don't like. But anyways, the best part of listening to podcasts for me is that I could listen while doing other things like cooking, cleaning, driving, working out, etc. I said I was hooked. I toyed with the idea of starting my own podcast during these 2 years that I was overseas. Well, I wasn't overseas for the whole 2 years, but it was during these 2 years that I thought about starting a podcast, but I never pulled the trigger. And then in March of 2017, my friend Graham invited me to be a guest on his podcast, and that was, like back in March. And I had a blast. I knew that as soon as we finished, I knew I had to start a podcast of my own. I knew that it was what I wanted to do, And through my unorthodox experiences over the past years before that, I'd made lots of connections that would turn out to be very valuable for my show, guests and all that. But I feel like there were tons of obstacles along the way in creating my podcast, but most of them were able to be overcome just by good planning. And I knew that the launch of my podcast was the most important part. This is something that if you started listening to my podcast recently, you might not know, but I launched it on my birthday, May 28th of this year. And it's kind of interesting because I kind of growth hacked it. My friends were all going to write on my wall, my Facebook wall, right? And so I wanted to give them something to look at. You know what I mean? Typically, when you go write on someone's Facebook wall for their birthday, it's like they've got the same profile picture they've had for the past 6 months, and there's not really much fresh content. And so I decided to create this massive launch around my birthday. I would definitely advise anyone who's coming out with something massive in the next few months to launch something by their birthday, because you get a giant spike in organic traffic on those days. Kind of just a little growth hack tip. But if you launch something and it's not very good and it's not very professional, people are going to be very hesitant to give you a second chance later on, like down the road. You have to make a great first impression with any project. Like for me personally, I know what I like about my favorite podcasts, and I did a lot of research on how to launch a successful podcast, and I narrowed it down to 3 things. I've never really shared this strategy on a podcast before, but number 1, you need good content. Like no matter what, if your podcast sucks, no one's going to listen to it anyways. So it's got to feel authentic. It's got to feel natural. If it feels fake, if it feels awkward, people are going to turn that thing off in a heartbeat and never come back. So you've really got to make sure you got it dialed in from the beginning, because it's going to be hard for you to get a second chance. The second thing that I said is a major key to having a good successful launch is the appearance of longevity. And I knew from my own experience that if a podcast looked like it wasn't going to last very many episodes, I wouldn't listen to it, simply because I didn't want to get attached to a show that isn't going to stick around. You got to be in it for the long game. So at launch, I had launched 8 episodes all at the same time. So a lot of podcasts don't even get past 8 episodes. Maybe they're like, oh, we're going to try this thing out. We'll do 1 a week for the next couple months and see how we do. And I wanted to show that I was in it for the long haul. I was in it, here we are at the end of this year, 7 months later, I'm on episode 66. I'm obviously in this thing for the long haul. It's not just some kind of like goofy thing I was trying, it's something I committed to. And, I wanted to prove that right off the bat. So longevity, the appearance of longevity is very important to me. And I think it's important when you're launching. And then the last major key, is good promotion. And that's something that not everyone can do. And by promotion, I basically mean visual content. Obviously you can have written sales copy, you can have written content about your podcast, but people like visuals. For me personally, I always appreciate when a podcast has different artwork for every episode. Like that just shows like the extra level of professionalism, the extra mile of professionalism. And so I knew that I wanted to create unique artwork for each one of my episodes, and I've still continued to do that to this day. But, you have to create compelling promo material because nobody's going to go listen to your show if they don't feel compelled to listen to it. And if you can't entice people to give your show a chance, you've already lost. And so using the skills that I'd acquired over the years, I was able to create my website, my logo, record, mix, master the show, and create interest with compelling artwork. And I launched with 8 episodes, like I said, on iTunes, Google Play, Soundcloud, all that, within a month of recording my first episode. Which is kind of crazy. Like, I recorded the first episode with Adam Kishoro on May 2nd, I believe it was. And then I launched the first 8 episodes, including episode 0. I think I uploaded like episode 7 and 8, maybe like the day after, but you get the point. Like, at launch, I had a bunch in the tank ready to go. And basically, I launched the podcast on my 23rd birthday. I had no idea what the response would be like. I didn't go in with very high expectations, to be honest. I just, I knew that it was going to take some time to acquire an audience and get the curiosity up. But, within the first week, I was averaging about 700 listeners per day. 700 unique listeners per day. And, I knew I was onto something. I knew I was more motivated than ever to keep it going, And the biggest obstacle I face now is definitely my time management. I have really high goals of uploading multiple episodes per week. The past week I uploaded 3 episodes. And in order to fulfill those goals, I have to make sacrifices, I don't hang out with a lot of my old friends as much as I did, I don't really go out and party. I'll make exceptions, of course. I like my electronic music, I'll go to some music festivals, I'll go to some events here and there, but, I'm not the one to go out to the bar and just waste a bunch of money and time, just, shooting the shit. Like, I've got stuff to do, man. Like, I don't sleep very much. I don't watch Netflix. And, at the end of the day, some, people don't understand me, and that's okay. And, just like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I'm sitting here in my room working on my craft while everyone else in the whole country, the whole world really is probably out partying, And, I don't say that to be braggadocious or like holier than thou kind of shit, but like, it's just all a matter of choices, man. Like, it's a matter of choices. I'm going to Mexico this month for like a whole week. I'm gonna have plenty of time to party it up then. Like, I don't need to party tonight. At the end of the day, it's just another day. Obviously, there's some cool significance of a new year, but I'm still gonna be doing the same thing. So, anyways, I knew that in order to be extraordinary, I can't engage in ordinary activities. You have to level up. And that's challenging because the old me wants to stay stagnant, wants to go hang out with his friends. I'm not trying to brag here, but I had a bunch of people ask me to go out with them tonight. And, I didn't even tell any of them that I was just going to stay in because I didn't want to be that guy. I just told them I was doing something else. But, the new me has to emerge. And it's not going to come easily. Most of it is mindset. I've experienced a lot of growing pains from this podcast for sure. But I'm much better for it. And basically, I'm kind of moving into the next chapter in this podcast thing. In 2018, I'm going to focus a lot more on how I can monetize, of course. I've talked a lot about that. I've got some really, really, really interesting things happening this week as far as partnerships for the podcast. And I'm also working with a coach right now who's helping me monetize some of my talents. But I'm proud of the brand that I've built. I'm proud of the Andrew Deitch podcast brand. My show is all about having transparent, vulnerable conversations, and I've got people waiting on the next episodes. Like, there's literally people that message me and say, "Hey, when's the next episode coming out?" Like a lady that I don't even know who this person is on Instagram said, "I'm binge listening to all of your episodes right now." Like, that's crazy to me. Like, that's so nuts. And that responsibility, it's dawning on me. It's kind of a weird situation. It's kind of a strange thing. Sorry, my phone is buzzing. Very rude. Very, very rude of me. Should have muted everything. But you know what? It's New Year's Eve. Got fireworks going. But through this process, I've realized that I had a skill set that people need. And, I'd launched and maintained this show, this cool show. And, people are, I had a guy I heard the other day who asked somebody if I was doing the podcast full time and made it big. And, here I am. I'm still working my full-time job. The podcast is making me absolutely zero money. I'm pouring tons of time into it. Well, that's not necessarily true. I just brought on a client to help them with something. I'll tell you guys about that in a minute. But as of a few days ago, the podcast was making me absolutely zero money. And I've got this illusion of success or whatever, And just because people are listening to my podcast doesn't mean that I'm rich or anything. I'm still kind of doing the same thing I was doing 6 months ago. But, I realized that I had hit all of those 3 major points of a successful launch, and I'd sustained this growing audience ever since. People have started to reach out to me in regards to launching their own shows and podcasts. And I was flattered at first, but I didn't feel like I was qualified. But what I realized was, the learning curve for this kind of stuff is far too steep for some people, to invest all that time into figuring all this out. And, to launch a podcast that has good content, it has that illusion of sustainability. And I say illusion meaning like it should look like it's sustainable, but you should also plan on being sustainable. And also having that good promo, having all the good promo materials. And that trifecta is interesting because now that I've realized that, I've started to take on some clients, and it's grown to into a business. And I'm going to be helping people launch their own podcasts, whether it be helping them with video promos. If you follow me on Instagram, you see a lot of those that I do. Whether it be, visual content for their episode artwork, whether it be their website design and creating a cool website for all their podcasts to live on. I've realized that I had this kind of unique skill set because there, of course, there's plenty of other companies out there that will help people launch their podcasts, but what sets me apart what sets me apart from these other companies is a lot of them, they definitely know all the technical side and they probably know more than I do. But a lot of these people that run these companies are failed podcast hosts themselves. And most of them have never launched a successful podcast. They know the technical side, but most of the time they don't know how to help you scale. They don't know how to help you promote your episodes on social media. They don't speak that side of the language. And, it's so easy to make your podcast like better than 99% of what's out there. I'm not trying to be mean, guys, but like I've heard some podcasts that are absolute trash. Audio quality is terrible. Content is awkward. Promo materials are awful. illusion of sustainability is in the garbage. Like it's just like, if you have those three things, you're gold. You're golden. You got good content. You've got that illusion of sustainability, and you've got good promo. Like, you can't be stopped. Like, there's no reason why you can't be stopped. And, when you have issues with that kind of stuff, those types of companies just can't help you. And so, I talked about how I had thought about starting a podcast the 2 years before. And, if I had to start over, I wish I would have just trusted my gut instinct to start the podcast years ago, because obviously this is one of the best things I've ever done. But and the podcast market is way more saturated now. Lots of competition. But, I don't look at it with a scarcity mentality. There's just as many podcasts as there are. There's just that many more people that are just now getting into podcasts and just starting out. I have tons of friends that tell me, like, dude, I listened to your show for the first time and now I love podcasts. Thank you for introducing me to podcasts. I love this. And mark my words, 2018, is going to be huge for podcasts. Huge for podcasts. And some people have it twisted. They don't realize, they think audio is like the step before you jump to video. Like, oh, that's cute, you're doing a podcast, let me know when you start doing like actual video content. And it's like, no, dude, you've got it twisted. Audio content is going to be massive in 2018 and the coming years. And it's for all those reasons why I said before. You can listen to it while you're doing other stuff. People want to be productive. People want to multitask. I don't want to sit down and watch a 3-hour podcast on a video. But while I'm driving, I would love to listen to one. While I'm at work and I'm doing data entry, I would love to listen to one. When I'm cooking, I would love to listen to one. When I'm cleaning my room, I would love to listen to one. And so that's why audio content is becoming so massive, is because we finally have devices that allow us to have that content on the go with us at all times. We've got Bluetooth headphones, so you can just have them around your neck, and then when you want to listen, you literally click play on the button on your earbuds, and you start playing the podcast right where you left off. It's great. And more people, I can ask my Google Home to play the podcast. I can say, hey, I'm not going to say it because it's going to trigger it. Actually, that'd be kind of cool. Here, I'll do it right now. Okay, Google, play the Andrew Deitch podcast.
Sure, the Andrew Deitch podcast. Here's where you left off.
Come on, Google. Okay, Google, play the latest episode of the Andrew Deitch podcast.
Sure, here's the latest episode of the Andrew Deitch podcast, 66, NCAA football player to Bitcoin boy, Xander Yost.
I got humbled big time, and it was like just such a good thing. It's probably the best lesson that you can like learn in life. Google, is that like you're not...
Stop. But like, how cool is that I could go to my Google Home and ask it to play me my podcast? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. And of course, if I had video and I had my Google Chromecast, like, I could ask it to play video content as well. But the cool thing about audio is, like I said, it's passive. Your hands are busy, but your mind is idle. You can listen to a podcast, and that's what's so crazy and awesome about it. But, like I said, I wish I would have started 2 years ago, but I had too many limiting beliefs. I was thinking, I'm too young. I don't have anything worth saying. Who's going to care about my stupid show anyways? What if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself? But if I had started then, I can only imagine where I'd be now. But of course, hindsight is 2020. I don't beat myself up too much about it. It's part of my story. But I can share that with you guys now. I can share that with you guys and inspire you guys to create your own podcast. And that's and that's what I really want to get out, what I want you guys to get out of this is, if you've been toying with the idea of starting a podcast, like, this is your year. This is your time. You need to do it. 2018 is going to be the year of the podcast. Mark my words. Like, if 2017 was big for podcasts, 2018 is going to be huge for podcasts. I mean, like, Oprah just started a podcast. Tony Robbins is getting huge into podcasts. Gary Vaynerchuk is like super deep in podcast audio content. You know, like, all these giant names, you're going to see more and more major players jumping into the podcast space in 2018. Some of them will fizzle out because some of their content will suck because, you know, if they're already famous, they'll be able to have good promo, and they'll be able to, a lot of them will not have that appearance of longevity. They're like jumping on a bandwagon that they're not really committed to, and they're going to fizzle out. But some of them will become wildly successful household names in the podcast world. Mark my words, you will see it. Hopefully I can become one of those household names. You know, I would love that. I'm very passionate about what I'm doing here. I love it. It's super fun. It's opened so many doors for me in the past few months, but yeah, I mean, that's really it, guys. And if you want help with your podcast, I mentioned this earlier, I'm starting to take on clients for early 2018 to help them with this. You know, it's my time is very limited. I'm spending all of my free time working on my projects, working on this new business, working on putting out my own episodes, and my time is valuable to me. So if you need help with your podcast, you know, I'm happy to give you information, but for actual physical coaching and help, I've created some packages that you can that I would be happy to send you the pricing for, and we can talk about that. But you know, maybe you have an idea for a podcast, but like I said, the learning curve is too steep. Let's talk. Let's figure out how we can collaborate. Let's figure out if we can help each other out. And yeah, but I've gone on for, how long has it been? 30 minutes. Wow. Yeah, it's like 12:31 now in 2018. Doesn't feel like a new year, but you know, that's fine. And really, guys, that's just what I wanted to say. Hopefully this wasn't too chill of a podcast. I kind of just ranted and rambled for a little while, but just wanted to kind of spill what I was thinking about. Like I said, that article will be out on Voyage ATL pretty soon, kind of talking about what I just talked about. But one last thing I did want to mention is if you're listening to this right now, thank you. Like, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving my podcast a chance. You know, I know that I mentioned the 3 pillars, you know, the good content, good promo, appearance of longevity, but, you know, it's because of you guys that are listening right now that I'm so motivated to keep doing what I'm doing. And I hope this inspires you. I hope this inspires you to do that thing that you've always been wanting to do, whether it be start a podcast, whether it be to step up your production value of your videos, whether it be to buy that new computer so that you can actually edit videos, whether it be to, you know, making your own personal brand and investing in, you know, a Squarespace account or something like that to create a dope website, whatever it might be. I'm here to give you permission right now to step your shit up and create something epic in 2018, because everyone loses when you play small in the world. And I'm not the type of guy that is going to be like, I don't believe in a zero-sum game. I don't think that if I'm successful, you have to lose. I don't believe that if you're winning, I have to lose. I believe that we can all win together. And, you know, I want to leave a legacy that is long-lasting. I want this podcast to be long-lasting. Hopefully, and I'll come on here and do another yearly update next year. And 2018 will be the coolest year of my life, hopefully. But we'll just have to see how it goes. But again, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to wrap this thing up. If you want to follow me on social media, you can go to my website, andrewdeitch.com. If you're listening right now, I know you're a hardcore fan of this show. Like, I know you are. And I hate to be this guy, but I am going to guilt you so hard right now into going to iTunes and giving me a 5-star review. The reason behind that, when I launched, I wanted to get into the iTunes new and noteworthy section. Long story short, it didn't happen. But I've looked in the new and noteworthy section, and not all of those podcasts are that new. Like, some of them are like a year old. So we can still get in there, guys. Like, I'm still keeping hope alive, but there's only 51 5-star reviews in there. And I've put out, like I said, about 75 uploads, 75 pieces of content here. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of my life poured into this project. And all I'm asking is for each one of you to go to iTunes and leave me a little review. I would love to double that number and get to 100 reviews by episode 100. That would be incredible. That would be fantastic. So that's not gonna ever happen if you guys don't help me out. And it takes 2 seconds. If you're on Android, I understand, but if you go on your computer and you have iTunes, just go find my podcast and rate it 5 stars. If you're on an iPhone, it's literally so easy. You just go in the Apple Podcasts app and find my podcast, rate it 5 stars. And yeah, man, that's it. That's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I really hope that you really just, it sounds cheesy, but just go after your dreams this year, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to everyone around you, because everyone else loses when you play small. So I don't know. I'm so bad at wrapping this up, but I don't know why I can't. I'll see you guys later, guys, and I'll see you on episode 67. I'm not going to say it because it's going to trigger it.